Hi everybody, welcome back to MetaStellar's YouTube channel. My name is Emma Foster, and I am an editor here at MetaStellar. Are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through this weekend? We've got them. So today we have an underground magical society, a plot to move the Earth's orbit, and an epic historical prophecy. So hi again everybody. It is just me here today, so Maria couldn't make it. I'm going to be doing all the Free Fridays. I don't have a screen behind me, so you'll just have to listen to the sound of my voice. But go ahead and get started looking at these different reviews that we've done today. I am helped out by Maria KOROLOV and Alex KOROLOV as well. So I also did some of these reviews. All right, we'll start off with A Lever and a Place to Stand by Andrew Stanek. It is a standalone hard science fiction book, and it's currently free on Kindle Unlimited. And this is the author's first time on our Free Friday list. Kindle Unlimited, if you don't know, is this thing where Amazon offers their books for free for a limited time, and if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can go and read those books for free. And every week, Amazon comes out with a new list of the top 100 science fiction and fantasy books that are currently free that you can check out, and those are the books that we review. So, I'll start off with this one. It starts slowly, Maria says, because she reviewed this, and it starts off with an explosion in space in the first chapter. So this because the explosion is the only thing that's talked about, that's why it appears so slow. It then shifts to Peter's perspective. As the book opens, Peter is this hero astronaut. He's being awarded by the president, and we hear him being interviewed, and he talks about what happened up there in space. He was apparently part of this crew that was sent up to repair this gigantic telescope. There was an accident, an explosion, and Peter had to act quickly to save everybody. But in the process, he was exposed to a large amount of radiation, and when he returned to Earth, he was grounded, so he can no longer be an astronaut. We then see him go home to his dad, and he also is an astronaut whose dreams were cut short, so they have a lot in common there. Afterwards, he meets up with a friend who's an astronomer, and this friend tells him some information. Apparently, a new planet has been discovered, and this planet is going to be swinging through the solar system, so it's like a rogue planet type deal. And there might be a close enough encounter for astronauts to visit, but Peter isn't so sure. And anyway, he can't go up to space anymore. So then Peter goes all the way down to Australia. He visits this coral reef as well as another friend of his who is also a scientist, and he explains that he plans to drill a hole deep into the earth for scientific research. Then he visits a third friend, and he tells him about his plans for a space elevator. So Maria says that we're 4 chapters in, and you get a little bit of sense of who Peter is and the people around him, but she doesn't really understand why he's the protagonist of the story, and for that matter, what the story actually is. So she kept reading, and she finally found out what the problem was. It turns out that that planet that was mentioned earlier, it's going to hit Earth in approximately 100 years. So Congress holds a bunch of hearings. One person suggests maybe humans should be evacuated to Mars, But then it's Peter's turn to speak, and his suggestion is moving the Earth instead. So for some reason, blowing up the incoming planet is not an option, and apparently Earth being in a certain orbit, that's going to affect things. So you would think with 100 years, they would be able to follow through with like blowing up that planet or anything like that, but apparently not. So meanwhile, Peter's contacted, and there's this mysterious artificial intelligence that contacts him, and it's set up on behalf of a mysterious benefactor who is willing to spend this infinite amount of money for this project that Peter came up with to move the Earth. So Peter agrees to head it up, and he already has 3 people he has in mind for the project. So that is the 3 people that were mentioned earlier. And Maria says she's not really caught up with the story so far. It moves really slowly, and with the deadline being 100 years away, she doesn't think pace is really going to pick up, so she's not going to be sticking with it. The next book is After the Blackout by Colton Lively. So this is a standalone EMP thriller. It's currently free on Kindle Unlimited, and Colton Lively has been on our Free Friday list a lot. This author writes a lot of EMP thrillers. So if you don't know, that's when an electromagnetic pulse wipes out all electronic devices. And in this case of the story, Alex KOROLOV reviewed this. He says that in this case, there's also planes that are affected by the EMP. So it starts out, chapter 1, with Katie Sheets. She's sitting in the small plane with her husband, also named Peter, and he is a pilot. Their 12-year-old daughter Meredith is in the back of the craft with a friend, and they're flying over some hills in Tennessee when suddenly they hear a mayday call over the radio. So in the next chapter, Peter tries to radio the closest airfield, but he gets no response. They notice this commercial airliner and that's flying nearby. It crashes to the ground and explodes, and just then all the power in their plane goes out. Peter prepares for emergency land, and he tries to get to this nearby airfield without any power, and then he moves to the next chapter. Peter manages to get the plane on the ground, but it hits hard, it starts tumbling. Katie is knocked unconscious, glass and metal is shattering around her, and Alex says that's as far as he got into this book. So he does most of the EMP stories here. It's like one of his favorite type of genres. So said that when it starts out with a plane that loses power, there's nothing new going on here, he says, and he liked how the story started out with a lot of action, but it doesn't seem original in any way, so he's not going to keep with this one. Next story we have is the Pendragon Saga by Sarah Woodbury. It is part of the last Pendragon Saga series by Sarah Woodbury, as I mentioned, and the books are ranging from like 99 cents to about $3.99 on Kindle Unlimited. Actually, they're not available on Kindle Unlimited, but the author has been on our Free Friday list before, yes. And I reviewed this story. So this historical fantasy takes place in Wales during the Dark Ages. It starts with this old man who's taking this baby from a queen, and her husband has just been killed in battle. The old man knows this because he's part of an ancient brotherhood, and he's able to sort of divine whether or not this baby might be the chosen one. So we got chosen one trope going on. Unfortunately, he and his brothers have tried to divine the chosen one several times, and so far their picks haven't been successful. So you gotta wonder, like, is this baby actually chosen one, or is this just going to be another thing where it just all falls apart? The old man is also able to see the future. He realizes that the person who killed the king is going to take over, possibly marry the queen, that whole deal. So he doesn't look forward to the coming reign, especially since it will be years before this child, who it turns out is a descendant of King Arthur, can return to claim the throne. The story then shifts several years later to Rianne. She is the daughter of the person who, from the beginning, killed the king and rose to power by forcibly marrying the queen. So her dad is the one who took over, did all these horrible things, and she mostly lives in fear of her father. And on top of that, with the Saxons also causing chaos throughout the country, she's just learning how to lie low. She's just trying to get by, and honestly, she's more of a maidservant than a princess. She does a lot of the chores around the kingdom. Suddenly, the boy from the beginning of the story, Cadwallader, is brought in by the soldiers. So he and the queen actually acknowledge each other as mother and son, so it's not a secret who this person is. And for some reason, the king has kept him alive for this whole point. I'm not really sure why, but the new king berates him for losing his men in battle. He went out, there's a battle going on, but it's clear that something treacherous happened for Cadwallader to lose because he's very skilled, and the king orders his death for the next morning, despite Rianne's protests. So as he's taken away, Rianne wishes that she could do something about it. This is where I stopped reading. I love reading historical fantasy, even if it takes place, especially if it takes place in medieval times. But with this story, I admit it took some time for me to figure out who was who, and also a majority of this beginning was dedicated to explaining a lot of what was going on, who was who, where this thing is headed. So it was a little slow for me. But if you enjoy reading historical fantasy and want to explore the Dark Ages of Wales, I would recommend this series. The next book we have is something totally different. It's called Obsolete Theorem by Stan C. Smith. This is the first of 4 books in the Across the Horizon series, and the other books are $4.99 each. They are available on Kindle Unlimited. This is the author's first time on our Free Friday list. Maria also read this one for us. So this is the first book in the series, but she says that as she started reading it, it sounded awfully familiar. She'd already met Skyra, who is this Neanderthal woman living 50,000 years in the past, and she's already met Lincoln, a scientist living in our near future. So then she figured out what was going on. The book she read previously, Genesis Sequence, was a prequel to the series, and it features some of the main characters. So the series is about time travel, apparently. So Lincoln the scientist figures out how to send drones back to the past. However, they don't go back to his past. They actually go back to a past in a different universe. So it's like an alternate universe type of thing. And the remains of one of his drones, it's found dating back 50,000 years ago. So now Maria's wondering, did the drone actually go back to his own past, or if Lincoln is from a different universe and sent a drone back to the past of this one? Not really sure, but there is a message scratched on the drone. The message tells Lincoln he himself must go back in time to a particular location or all of humanity will be at risk. So back in the past, Skylar's sister has been captured by a group of humans, and Skylar wants to rescue her, but there's just one of her and several of them. So fortunately, she does have one advantage. She can tell what someone's about to do before they do it. But in practice, though, it doesn't allow her to simultaneously fight a bunch of men at once. Her sister has the same weird talent, and eventually we learn that Lincoln has the same thing in the future day. So Maria says she's not going to tell us how the battle comes out in case you want to read the prequel first, but as for her, she doesn't feel drawn to either one of the main characters, but she does like the drone, which is keeping Skylar alive. So she's going to remember that drone for later if she ever gets back into the series. She doesn't think it's going to keep her from reading the book in the future, but if you're interested in a thoughtful exploration of time travel physics, then this could be an interesting one for you to pick up. And before we get to book number 1, I want to start by thanking all of our Patreon supporters, including like a few of our latest ones. I really wish I had the screen behind me so that I can see the list, but here we are. And before I forget, there's also Maria's novels have just been published on Amazon, so you can find them in the description below. And I am also an editor. I do copy editing and line editing, so my services can be found below as well. All right, so the last book is The Secret World of Maddie Gray by Granger, so it's one name. This is the first of 2 books in the Drew Collins series by Granger, and the other book is $8.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and this is the author's first time on our Free Friday list. So I thought this story was really interesting. It begins with Maggie Gray. She's this college student who has gotten up front in front of her class. She needs to read out her essay about the civil rights movement, but she hasn't actually written anything. So instead, Maggie tells the story of her grandmother who lived during that time. She explains that once, her grandmother kept waking up to see people in the neighborhood walking down the street, but they would always disappear when she tried to meet them outside. So the story then cuts to this flashback from the grandmother's perspective. So one night, the grandmother and her cousin, they sneak out, they manage to find the group, and they make for the town hall. When they arrive, the grandmother sits to this town meeting, and it's part of an ancient magical society. A man comes up to the front of the stage. He announces that he is a descendant of an important magical figure, and actually, like, one of the first magical people to set foot on the American shores. So this was like way back several hundred years ago, and this ancestor was a slave. She was the first slave with magical abilities to step foot on these shores. So then a bunch of people start showing up to this meeting, a group dressed in tribal clothing, another group of beautiful women. A member even explains that they're sirens, so we have sirens in this. And then the pastor and his wife show up. Maggie then goes on to mention like elves, witches, vampires, and all of these different beings that belong to this black magical society. At one point, a student interrupts, asking how this is relevant to the lecture, but the professor, however, tells Maggie to continue, oddly enough. So the story then shifts to the grandmother again, and the people in the magical society are very angry that they can't use their abilities to fight back against the hostile people coming around, including the KKK. So the man at the podium proposes that everyone leave and create their own communities where they will be safe, they'll be able to practice magic. A few people don't really want to leave their home, but it's starting to seem like a viable option. So Maggie then explains that her grandmother continued attending the meetings and that the head of it all, so the man who was standing at the podium, eventually took advantage of her. Her grandmother gave birth to her mom. Now she is likely a vampire descendant. So not amused, the professor tells Maggie to meet her in his office. And that's where I stopped reading, but I really enjoyed what I've read so far. I think I might stick with this one because of all the neat concepts the story has introduced. And I also really like the character Maggie, so I would recommend that you check this one out. So that is all of the reviews that I have. Glad that you were able to meet with me this week, and I think there should be a couple more videos that are popping up on YouTube that they are going to recommend. So we'll see you all next week. Bye.